The stars burned red across the Kepler sector as massive warships tore through space like hungry wolves. The Vorthok Empire had come to feast once again. Their dark metal vessels stretched for miles, each one bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. Die. Behind them followed the harvester ships ready to strip entire worlds down to their cores. Admiral Velthari pressed her crystalline hands against the command deck of the Federation flagship Harmony's Light. Her species had evolved on peaceful garden worlds where conflict meant disagreeing about which flowers to plant. Now, she watched helplessly as her people's greatest achievement. The Galactic Federation crumbled before an enemy that knew only hunger and destruction. "Admiral, we've lost contact with the Centauri Defense Fleet," reported Commander Zephylos, his blue skin pale with fear. The Vorthok broke through their lines in less than 6 hours. 6 hours. It had taken the Federation 3 centuries to build the Centauri Defense Fleet. The Vorthok had destroyed it in the time it took most Federation species to have lunch. Velthari's species communicated through harmonic vibrations, and right now, her song was one of pure despair. Federation had tried everything. Their most advanced weapons barely scratched Vorthok armor. Their fastest ships couldn't outrun Vorthok hunters. Their brightest minds couldn't outsmart Vorthok tactics because the enemy didn't use tactics. They simply overwhelmed everything. In their path, "How many systems have we lost?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. 47 confirmed, Admiral. Intelligence suggests the Vorthok are moving toward the core worlds. At their current pace, they'll reach Federation Prime within 2 standard months. 2 months until the heart of galactic civilization became another dead rock floating in space. Velthari had seen the aftermath of Vorthok attacks. No life remained. No cities. No monuments. Not even bacteria. The Vorthok consumed everything that could provide energy or raw materials, leaving behind only empty husks of planets. The door to the command deck hissed open, and General Korthvin entered, the massive reptilian being commanded what remained of the Federation's military forces. His scales, normally a proud emerald green, had dulled to the color of old leaves. "The Council has authorized the final protocol," he announced. His voice carried the weight of defeat. "We're sending distress signals to every star system in the galaxy. Every species, no matter how primitive or isolated." Velthari's crystal body dimmed. The final protocol meant the Federation was admitting they couldn't save themselves. They were begging anyone and everyone for help, even species they had never contacted before. "Have we heard anything from the Outer Rim territories?" she asked. "Some responses from the Andromedan Collective? They're sending what ships they can spare, but it won't be enough. The Kepler Union is mobilizing their merchant fleets, but those are cargo haulers, not warships." Korthvan pulled up a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red markers indicated Vorthok-occupied systems, spreading like an infection toward the blue markers of Federation space. Yellow dots showed neutral systems that had received the distress signal. "What about this one?" Velthari pointed to a small, yellow dot far from the main galactic arms. "System designation Sol. It responded to our signal." The general's scales rippled with what his species used for laughter, though there was no humor in it. "That's the Deathworld system. Third planet is called Earth. The species there calls themselves humans. Deathworld." The term made Velthari's harmonic frequency drop to an uncomfortable level. Gravity twice what most species can survive. Atmosphere. That's barely breathable. Massive weather systems that can level continents. The planet is covered in poisonous plants, predatory animals, and natural disasters that would wipe out most civilizations. Korthvan shook his massive head. The creatures that evolved there would have to be incredibly violent just to survive. But they achieved spaceflight. Barely. Our long-range scouts reported they've only recently developed faster-than-light travel, primitive fusion weapons, basic energy shields. They've been having wars with each other for their entire recorded history, every nation, every tribe, every group, constantly fighting. Velthari considered this. Most Federation species had evolved past warfare before they reached for the stars. The idea of a species that fought constantly and still managed to develop advanced technology was disturbing. Their response to our distress signal was unusual, Korthven continued, pulling up a communication log. The message was short and direct. Federation vessels, this is Admiral Quandeho of the Earth Deep Space Command. We received your distress call. We're coming to help. Send coordinates and tactical data on enemy forces. But no flowery diplomatic language. No requests for additional information, no demands for payment or negotiation, just a simple statement that they were coming to help. How many ships are they sending? Valtheri asked, unknown. They haven't provided fleet composition data. Our xenobiologists estimate that a Deathworld species would have small, heavily fortified populations. They probably don't have many vessels to spare. Communications officer approached the command area. Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from the Sol system. Put it through. The holographic display flickered and showed a being unlike any Valthari had seen. The human was smaller than most Federation species, with pale skin and dark hair, but there was something in its eyes, something that made her crystal form resonate with an uncomfortable frequency. This is Admiral Quandeho. We've analyzed your tactical data on the Vorthok Empire. We'll be arriving at your position in 72 hours with the First Fleet. Have your remaining forces fall back to defensive positions around your core worlds. The transmission ended abruptly. First Fleet. General Korthvin's scales shifted color to show confusion. How many fleets do they have? And did he just give us orders? Commander Zeflos asked. No Federation ally has ever spoken to us that way. Valthari stared at the empty holographic display where the human's image had been. Something about that brief message troubled her. The human hadn't asked for Federation technology or resources. He hadn't negotiated for favorable trade, agreements, or territorial rights. He had simply analyzed their situation and started giving military commands as if it was the most natural thing in the galaxy. Admiral, the communications officer called out again. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures. Emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system. Vorthok forces? No, Admiral. The energy patterns are completely different. Whatever's coming, it's not using any technology we've seen before. Valthari moved to the sensor station and studied. The readings? The approaching ships generated power levels that shouldn't be possible with known fusion technology. Their hull compositions showed materials that Federation science claimed couldn't exist in stable forms. How long until they reach us? At current speed, 14 hours. General Korthvin joined her at the sensor station. Those readings can't be correct. No species builds ships that generate that much energy. Power requirements alone would... He stopped speaking as more energy signatures appeared on the display, and more. Within minutes, the sensors showed dozens of approaching vessels, all generating impossible power levels. By the ancient stars, whispered Commander Zeflos. What kind of ships are these humans bringing? Valtheri didn't answer. She was beginning to understand that everything the Federation thought they knew about Deathworlds and the species that evolved on them might be completely wrong. These humans weren't sending a few primitive vessels to make a token gesture of support. They were bringing a fleet that made Federation technology look like children's toys. And somewhere in the depths of space, Admiral Quandeho was studying tactical reports that would soon teach the galaxy what it really meant to face predators from a death world. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a thunderclap across the void. Admiral Valtheri watched her sensor displays with growing amazement as ship after ship materialized in perfect formation. These weren't the crude vessels she had expected. From a primitive Deathworld species, each human ship was a masterpiece of aggressive engineering. Where Federation vessels curved gracefully through space like flowing water, human ships cut through the darkness like predators stalking prey. Their hulls were thick slabs of unknown alloys, bristling with weapon ports and sensor arrays that swept space with mechanical precision. Admiral Commander Zeflos reported, his voice tight with disbelief. I'm reading over 200 human vessels. Capital ships, cruisers, destroyers, and support craft. Their formation spacing is perfect. General Korthvin studied the tactical display with growing respect. Look at their positioning. They've arranged themselves to cover every possible attack vector. This isn't luck or accident. This is professional military doctrine. The lead human vessel dwarfed even the largest Federation battleships. Its hull stretched nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern, armed with weapon systems that made Valthari's crystal form vibrate with nervous energy. Massive turrets rotated slowly, tracking different sections of space as if the ship expected enemies to appear from any direction. "Incoming transmission from the human flagship," announced the communications officer. The holographic display shimmered to life, revealing Admiral Quan Deho standing on what appeared to be a military command bridge. Unlike the soft, organic curves of Federation ship design, the human bridge was all sharp angles and functional surfaces. Every station was occupied by crew members who moved with practiced efficiency. "Admiral Valthari, this is Admiral Quan Deho aboard the battleship Taigok Warrior. We're here to assist with your Vorthok problem." Valthari noticed something immediately. Human didn't ask permission to enter Federation space. He didn't request diplomatic clearance or offer formal greetings. He simply announced his presence and stated his purpose as if it was the most natural thing in the galaxy. "Admiral Quan, we're grateful for your assistance. However, we should discuss tactical coordination with your fleet commanders before engaging the enemy." The human's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested he found her comment amusing. "Admiral, we don't coordinate with allies. We coordinate our allies. Captain Li Suben will be taking command of all Federation forces in this sector." A second human appeared on the display. Captain Li Subin was smaller than the Admiral, but her presence filled the screen with quiet authority. Her uniform was simple and functional, designed for combat rather than ceremony. "Admiral Valthari," Captain Li said, "we've reviewed your tactical reports on Vorthok operations. Your defensive strategies are well planned, but ultimately ineffective. Against this type of enemy," General Korthvin stepped forward, his scales shifting to show irritation. "Captain, the Federation military has been studying Vorthok tactics for over a year. Our defensive positions are based on centuries of military experience." "Your experiences with civilized warfare," Captain Li replied calmly. "The Vorthok aren't civilized. They're a consumption-based species that operates on resource acquisition principles. Traditional defensive tactics won't work because they don't care about casualties or losses." She gestured to someone off-screen, and the display changed too. "Show a 3-dimensional map of the local star systems." Red markers indicated Vorthok positions, while blue showed Federation forces. "You've been trying to protect territory," Captain Li continued. "But territory doesn't matter to the Vorthok. They want resources. So we're going to give them what they want." "I don't understand," Valthari said. "We're going to let them take the Kepler mining station." The Federation officers exchanged shocked glances. The Kepler mining station was one of their most valuable resource extraction facilities, producing rare minerals essential for Federation technology. Captain General Korthvan protested, "That station represents decades of construction and investment. The strategic value alone. It's exactly why they want it," Admiral Quan interrupted.
Dr. Park Minwoo briefed them on the operational plan. A third human appeared on the display. Dr. Park Minwoo wore the uniform of a scientist, but his bearing suggested military training.
"We've analyzed Vorthok consumption patterns. When they acquire a high-value target, they concentrate their harvesting fleets for maximum extraction efficiency." The tactical display zoomed in on the Kepler mining station. "Their standard procedure is to bring their primary harvesting ships within close proximity of the target. This creates a temporary vulnerability window." "Vulnerability to what?" Valthari asked. "To this," Dr. Park said simply. The display changed to show technical specifications for human weapon systems. Valthari's crystal form resonated with shock as she read the data. Human weapons generated energy outputs that exceeded Federation safety regulations by factors of 10 or more. "These power levels," Commander Zephylos whispered, "they're beyond anything we've ever seen. Our Federation builds weapons designed not to cause excessive damage," Captain Li explained. "You have safety protocols, environmental considerations, and civilian protection standards. These are admirable qualities, but they're not useful in total war." "Total war?" The phrase made Veltharia's harmonic frequencies spike with alarm.
The Vorthok aren't interested in negotiation or coexistence, Admiral Kwan said. They want to consume
Everything in their path, so we're going to teach them what happens when they threaten a species that evolved on a world where everything tries to kill you. The display shifted to show human ship specifications. Velthari studied the data with growing amazement. Human vessels carried enough firepower to sterilize planets. Their armor was designed to withstand impacts that would shatter Federation ships. Their engines generated thrust levels that would crush most species under acceleration forces. Do your crews survive in ships like these? General Korthvan asked. We're from a death world, Captain Lee replied. Our gravity is twice what you're used to. Our atmosphere has higher oxygen content. Our planet has weather systems that generate more energy than most species' entire power grids. She paused, and for a moment Velthari saw something in the human's eyes that made her crystal form dim with instinctive fear. We don't just survive in these ships, Captain Lee continued. We're comfortable in them. This is normal for us. Dr. Parkman Wu pulled up another display showing human military organization. Admiral, your Federation maintains one unified military force. Humans have been competing militarily for our entire history. We have dozens of different military traditions, each one specialized for different types of warfare. The ships you see here represent just one branch of our military, Admiral Kwan added. We also have separate commands for planetary assault, deep space operations, special warfare, and system defense. Each branch has been training against the others for centuries. For what? Velthari asked, though she was beginning to fear the answer. For the day we might have to fight something worse than ourselves. Admiral Kwan replied. The display changed to show a new formation of human ships moving toward the Kepler mining station. These vessels were different from the main fleet, smaller and faster, with hull configurations that suggested they were designed for specific combat roles. Commander Cho Haerim is leading our advanced scouts, Captain Lee announced. She'll be positioning her forces to monitor Vorthok response to our tactical withdrawal. You're really going to let them take the station? General Korthvan asked. We're going to let them try, Admiral Kwan corrected. The difference between those two things is about to become very clear. As the human ships moved into position, Velthari realized that everything the Federation thought they knew about warfare was about to change. These humans didn't just come from a death world. It turned military conflict into an art form. Refined through centuries of competition and survival, the Vorthok had been consuming civilizations that fought with restraint and mercy. Now they were about to encounter a species that had learned to fight without either. The Vorthok took the bait exactly as Dr. Park Min-woo had predicted. Their massive harvesting fleet descended on the Kepler mining station like metal vultures, eager to strip away every valuable resource. Admiral Velthari watched from the bridge. Of Harmony's light as dozens of Vorthok ships surrounded the station, their dark hulls gleaming with predatory satisfaction. They're deploying extraction equipment, reported Commander Zeflos. Standard Vorthok harvesting pattern. They'll have the station completely consumed within 18 hours. Captain Lee Suben stood at the human tactical station that had been installed on the Federation flagship. Her fingers moved across holographic displays with practiced ease, monitoring data streams from human scout ships positioned throughout the system. Commander Cho Harim, report, Captain Lee spoke into her communication device. All Vorthok combat. Vessels are focusing on perimeter defense around the mining station, came the reply from the female scout leader. They've pulled ships from 3 nearby systems to protect their harvesting operation. Excellent. Lieutenant Nam Yujin, begin Phase 2. Admiral Velthari moved closer to the human tactical station. Over the past 6 hours, she had watched the humans work with growing fascination. They communicated in short, precise bursts. No wasted words. No unnecessary explanations. Every human officer seemed to know exactly what their role was and how it fit into the larger plan. Captain Lee Velthari said, "Shouldn't we be moving? To defend the mining station?" The human captain glanced at her with an expression that might have been amusement. "Admiral, we're not here to defend anything. We're here to end a war." On the main display, new contacts began appearing at the edge of the system. But these weren't more Vorthok ships. The energy signatures were completely different, and they were moving toward the Vorthok fleet at impossible speeds. "What are those vessels?" General Korthvan asked. "Human strike craft," Captain Lee replied. "Piloted by Captain Yoon So-hee and her squadron." The approaching ships were unlike anything in the Federation database. They were small, fast, and generated energy readings that suggested their engines operated on principles Federation science didn't understand. Each craft was heavily armed despite its compact size. "How many fighters are in the squadron?" Valtheri asked. 48 strike craft, 12 heavy interceptors, and 6 command vessels." The numbers made no sense to Federation tactical doctrine. Sending such a small force against a Vorthok harvesting fleet was suicide. The Vorthok had over 300 combat ships protecting their operation. "Captain, those fighters won't stand a chance against Vorthok capital ships," General Korthvan protested. "They're not supposed to fight capital ships," Captain Lee explained. "They're going to do something else." The human strike craft reached the outer edge of the Vorthok formation and immediately began an attack pattern that defied everything Valthari understood about space combat. Instead of engaging the enemy ships directly, they started targeting something else entirely. "They're attacking the harvesting equipment," Commander Zeflos reported with amazement. "The fighters are ignoring the Vorthok warships and going straight for the extraction machinery." Captain Lee nodded approvingly as she monitored the battle data. The Vorthok protect their military assets, but they don't expect anyone to target their industrial equipment. Captain Yoon is exploiting that assumption. Valthari watched the human fighters weave between Vorthok capital ships like insects avoiding the swipes of giant predators. But these insects had stingers. Precise weapons, fire from the human craft began systematically destroying harvesting platforms, extraction arrays, and processing facilities. "The Vorthok are responding," reported Lieutenant Nam Yujin from her communication station. "They're pulling combat ships away from perimeter defense to protect their harvesting operation." "Perfect," Captain Lee said. "Major Oh Seong-min, you are cleared for insertion." "Insertion?" Althari asked. "What kind of insertion?" Her question was answered when new contacts appeared on the sensor display. These ships were larger than the strike fighters, but smaller than capital vessels. They moved with purpose toward the mining station itself, using the chaos of the fighter attack as cover. "Marine assault transports," Captain Lee explained. "Major Oh Seong-min specializes in boarding actions." The concept made General Korthvan's scales shift to show confusion. "Boarding actions against a space station, against a Vorthok command ship," Captain Lee corrected. "While their fleet is distracted protecting harvesting equipment, our Marines are going to capture their fleet coordinator." Valtheri watched the human assault transports dock with a massive Vorthok vessel that had been directing the harvesting operation. Within minutes, internal explosions began lighting up the enemy ship's hull. The Vorthok command vessels started listing to one side as critical systems failed. "How many Marines did you send?" she asked. 12. 12 Marines are taking over a ship with a crew of thousands." "Major O's team doesn't take over ships," Captain Lee replied calmly. "They break them." The Vorthok fleet began to react with increasing desperation as more of their harvesting equipment was destroyed and their command ship went dark. But their response revealed something that made Admiral Kwandeho smile from his position on the main battle display. "They're falling back into a defensive formation," Admiral Kwan observed. "Classic mistake." "What mistake?" General Korthvan asked. "They're thinking defensively instead of offensively," Dr. Park Min-woo explained as he joined the conversation. "A Vorthok fleet in defensive formation is vulnerable to exactly one type of attack." The main display changed to show the positions of Admiral Kwan's battle fleet. The massive human warships had been waiting at the edge of the system, hidden behind a gas giant's magnetic field. Now, they began moving toward the Vorthok formation with steady, inexorable purpose. "All Federation vessels fall back to minimum safe distance," Admiral Kwan ordered. "We're about to demonstrate why humans build ships differently than everyone else." Valtheri felt her crystal form resonate with nervous energy as she realized what was about to happen. The human battle fleet wasn't approaching for a traditional engagement. They were moving into position for something much more devastating. "Captain Bae Hyensu, prepare the Soul's Hammer for close engagement," Admiral Kwan commanded. A new human officer appeared on the display. Captain Bae commanded one of the heavy cruisers, a vessel that bristled with weapon systems Federation engineers claimed shouldn't be able to exist on a single ship. "Admiral, we're in position for maximum effect," Captain Bay reported. "All ships report ready for coordinated strike." "What kind of coordinated strike?" Elthari asked, though she was beginning to fear the answer. "The kind that ends wars instead of prolonging them," Admiral Kwan replied. The human battle fleet reached optimal firing position and stopped. For a moment, space was silent except for the ongoing fighter battle around the mining station. Then Admiral Kwan gave a simple command that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "All ships, fire for effect." The human fleet opened fire simultaneously, and Velthari understood why these ships generated such massive energy readings. Human weapons didn't just destroy targets, they obliterated them. The coordinated barrage from over 100 capital ships struck the Vorthok defensive formation like the hammer of an angry god. Vorthok ships that had survived encounters with entire Federation fleets simply ceased to exist. Their shields failed instantly under the massive energy bombardment. Their hulls vaporized. Their defensive systems overloaded and exploded from within. In less than 30 seconds, the Vorthok harvesting fleet was reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma and twisted metal debris. "Impossible," whispered Commander Zephylos. "No fleet can generate that much firepower." "Federation fleets can't," Captain Lee corrected. "But we're not from the Federation, we're from a death world where everything is designed to kill everything else. We build our weapons the same way." Admiral Kwan's image dominated the main display as he surveyed the battlefield. "Dr. Young Hai-1, begin recovery operations for any Vorthok survivors." "We need intelligence on their fleet movements." "Survivors?" General Korthvan asked in amazement. "From that bombardment?" "There are always survivors," Dr. Jung Hai-1 replied from her medical station. "And survivors can provide information about where the rest of their fleets are located." Velthari realized that the humans weren't just militarily superior to the Federation. They approached warfare with a systematic efficiency that was both impressive and terrifying. They had used the mining station as bait, the fighter attack as a distraction, the marine assault as a disabling strike, and the fleet bombardment as the killing blow. But most importantly, they had planned for what came after the battle. "Admiral Kwan," she said, "what happens now?" The human admiral's expression was calm but determined. "Now we find the rest of their fleets and teach them the same lesson." The Vorthok wanted to consume the galaxy. Instead, they're going to learn what it means to be hunted by predators from Earth. The Vorthok survivors spoke of horrors beyond their understanding. Dr. Jung Hai-1 translated their mechanical chittering with clinical precision while Admiral Velthari listened from her position on the human medical ship. Ivuthak described human fighters that fought like demons, ships that refused to die, and weapons that turned their mighty fleets into cosmic dust. "They say we are not natural," Dr. Jung reported to Admiral Kwan via holographic link. "The Vorthok believe we are some kind of ancient weapon created by a dead civilization." Admiral Kwan nodded thoughtfully. "What else do they say?" "They claim their main battle fleet is already moving to this sector. Over 800 ships, including their heavy assault carriers. They expect to arrive within 40 hours. Captain." Lee Subin studied the tactical reports at her command station. 800 ships. That's 3 times larger than the fleet we just destroyed. "Good," Admiral Kwan replied simply. "Commander Ru Jae-hook, how is the Soul's Pride handling her repairs?" The image of a young human officer appeared on the display. Commander Ru commanded one of the destroyers that had taken damage during the mining station battle. His ship had been hit by Vorthok plasma weapons that should have vaporized it completely. "Hull breaches are sealed, Admiral. Main engines are running at 60% efficiency. Weapon systems are fully operational." Admiral Velthari moved closer to the human communication station. She had been studying human damage reports and found them deeply confusing. Human ships seemed to function normally, even when Federation engineers would consider them completely destroyed. "Commander Ru," she said, "your ship lost its entire port side armor plating. How are you still combat ready?" The human commander's expression showed mild surprise at the question. "Admiral, we build our ships with multiple hull layers. Losing outer armor just means we're fighting at reduced efficiency. Reduced efficiency, we can still fight and win." We just need to be more careful about taking additional hits. The concept made no sense to Federation military doctrine. When Federation ships took major damage, they retreated for extensive repairs. Human ships apparently continued fighting until they were completely destroyed. Sir Lieutenant Nam Yujin called from her station. Long-range sensors are detecting the Vorthok main battle fleet. They're approaching faster than expected. Captain Lee moved to the sensor display and studied the incoming contacts. They're not using standard formation. This looks like a rage assault. What's a rage assault? General Korthvan asked. The Federation military commander had remained on the human flagship to observe their tactics. It's what happens when you make Vorthok angry, Dr. Park Min-woo explained. They abandon tactical planning and just try to overwhelm the enemy with pure numbers and firepower. Admiral Kwan smiled, and Velthari noticed that human smiles in combat situations were distinctly unsettling. Perfect. Captain Moon Jisoo, are your artillery ships in position? A new human officer appeared on the display. Captain Moon commanded a group of vessels that Federation sensors could barely classify. They appeared to be mobile weapons platforms rather than traditional ships. All artillery batteries are deployed, Admiral. We have clear firing solutions on the Vorthok approach vector. What kind of artillery? Velthari asked. The kind that turned space battles into target practice. Captain Moon replied. The Vorthok fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a massive wave of dark metal and aggressive energy. Over 800 ships spread across space like a plague of mechanical locusts. Their formation was chaotic, but overwhelming, designed to crush any opposition through sheer volume of firepower. They're not even trying to be tactical, observed Captain Lee. Pure rage assault. They want to destroy everything in the system. Let them come, Admiral Kwan said calmly. All ships, implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7 apparently meant something significant to the human fleet. Ships began moving into positions that seemed random to Federation tactical analysis, but clearly followed some kind of doctrine that Velthari didn't understand. Admiral, she said, your ships are spreading out. Shouldn't you concentrate your firepower against their main formation? Admiral, we don't fight the way you fight, Captain Lee explained. Federation tactics assume that concentrated firepower is the key to victory. Human tactics assume that adaptability is the key to survival. The Vorthok fleet began its attack run, accelerating toward the human positions with reckless abandon. Their weapons started firing at maximum range, filling space with energy beams and plasma projectiles that could destroy planets. They're firing everything they have, Commander Zeflos reported with amazement. No regard for energy conservation or ammunition management, because they expect this to be over quickly, Dr. Park Min-woo said. Standard Vorthok doctrine says that overwhelming firepower in the first few minutes decides the battle. They're about to learn why that doesn't work against humans? Admiral Kwan replied. The first Vorthok energy beams reached the human fleet and struck. Commander Ru's damaged destroyer, the already wounded ship, took multiple direct hits that should have finished it completely. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Seoul's Pride is launching counterattack, reported Lieutenant Nam Yujin. Her weapons are still firing. Commander. Ru's voice came through the communication system, calm despite the fact that his ship was being torn apart around him. Admiral, we've lost main propulsion and life support is failing. Requesting permission to execute final protocol. Granted. All ships, clear firing lane for Seoul's Pride. Velthari watched in amazement as the dying human destroyer used its last engine power to accelerate directly toward the center of the Vorthok formation. Instead of trying to escape or surrender, Commander Ru was turning his ship into a weapon. Is he doing, she asked, something the Vorthok won't expect, Captain Lee? Replied. The Seoul's Pride plowed into the Vorthok formation and detonated. Its reactor core in a controlled explosion that vaporized a dozen enemy ships and disabled twice. The destruction was spectacular, but what happened next was even more impressive. All crew escaped in assault shuttles, Dr. Jung reported. They're still fighting. The shuttles that had evacuated from Commander Ru's ship weren't running away. They were attacking the confused Vorthok ships with weapons that seemed impossibly powerful for such small craft. Sergeant Han Woo-jin is leading the shuttle assault, Captain Lee explained. His teams specialize in close-quarters ship combat. more human ships began executing similar maneuvers. When the destroyer Sharp Blade lost its weapons systems, Captain Kim Min-ho rammed it into a Vorthok heavy cruiser. When the cruiser Mountain's Edge was surrounded by enemy ships, her crew abandoned ship and continued fighting from escape pods armed with military-grade weapons. "This is insane," General Korthvin whispered. "Your people turned defeat into attack." "We don't accept defeat," Admiral Kwan corrected. "We turn every disadvantage into a weapon."
Oh.
The Vorthok fleet, expecting easy victory against a numerically inferior enemy, found themselves fighting an opponent that became more dangerous when wounded. Human ships that should have been destroyed continued fighting. Human crew members who should have surrendered kept attacking. Human weapons that should have run out of ammunition somehow kept firing. "Captain Shin Dae-yoon, report," Captain Lee called to one of the fighter pilots. "Squadron is down to 30% operational craft," came the reply from the female pilot. "But we're still effective. The Vorthok don't know how to handle fighters that attack damaged ships instead of healthy ones. Explain that tactic," Velthari requested. "Federation fighters attack the strongest enemy ships first," Captain Shin's voice explained through the communication system. "Human fighters attack wounded ships because wounded ships are easier to kill, and their destruction affects enemy morale. You target the weak to demoralize the strong, you target the weak to eliminate them completely, then move on to the next weakest target. Eventually, even the strongest enemy ships become the weakest remaining targets. The systematic destruction of the Vorthok fleet continued as human forces demonstrated tactical flexibility that defied every rule of civilized warfare. They used damaged ships as battering rams. They turned evacuation procedures into assault operations. They coordinated attacks across impossible distances using communication methods that Federation science couldn't explain. Admiral Commander Zeflos reported, "The Vorthok fleet is breaking formation. They're trying to retreat." Negative, Admiral Kwan replied firmly. "Captain Moon Ji-soo, now would be an excellent time to demonstrate why we brought artillery." Ships. Captain Moon's artillery platforms had been waiting at the edge of the battle, apparently doing nothing. They opened fire with weapons that generated energy signatures larger than some stars. The retreating Vorthok ships found themselves trapped between the advancing human fleet and a barrage of destruction that turned entire sections of space into zones of lethal energy. "Complete enemy fleet destruction in approximately 12 minutes, reported Lieutenant Nam Yujin. Admiral Velthari realized that she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans hadn't just defeated a superior enemy force, they had systematically destroyed it, using tactics that turned every disadvantage into an advantage and every defeat into a victory. "Admiral Kwan," she said, "what happens when word of this battle reaches the rest of the Vorthok Empire?" The human admiral considered the question for a moment before answering. "They'll send bigger fleets, and you're prepared for that." Admiral Kwan's smile was the expression of a predator that had found worthy prey. "Admiral, we've been preparing for that our entire lives." 3 weeks after the destruction of the Vorthok main battle fleet, reports began reaching the Galactic Federation from across the galaxy. The reports were all similar and all impossible to believe. Human ships were appearing in Vorthok territory, striking without warning, and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Admiral Velthari studied the latest intelligence. Briefings aboard the human command ship Taigok Warrior. The data made no sense, according to Federation military doctrine. Human forces were somehow operating hundreds of light years behind enemy lines, attacking targets that should have been unreachable. "How are your ships getting past Vorthok defenses?" she asked. Admiral Kwande-ho, the human commander, gestured to Captain Ko Minji, who commanded one of the intelligence vessels. Captain Ko was smaller than most human officers, but her eyes held the same predatory focus that Velthari had learned to associate with human military thinking. "We're not getting past their defenses," Captain Ko explained. "We're going around them, through them, and under them simultaneously." "I don't understand." "The Vorthok build their defenses based on traditional invasion routes," Dr. Park Minwoo added from his analysis station. "They protect star systems, major shipping lanes, and resource centers. But they don't protect empty space." "Empty space doesn't need protection," General Korthvan pointed out. There's nothing there to attack. Exactly, Admiral Kwan said with that unsettling human smile. So that's where we go to plan our real attacks. The main display changed to show a three-dimensional map of Vorthok territory. Red markers indicated their major installations, while yellow lines showed their defensive patrol routes. But scattered throughout the map were blue dots that seemed to have no pattern or purpose. What are those blue markers? Velthari asked. Human. Forward operating bases, Captain Ko replied. We've been establishing hidden supply depots in asteroid fields, dead star systems, and interstellar space, places the Vorthok would never think to look. But how do you supply bases in the middle of nowhere? Very carefully, said Major Kwan Sang-ho, as his image appeared on the communication display. The Special Forces officer was currently operating, somewhere deep in Vorthok space, coordinating infiltration missions that Federation intelligence claimed were impossible. Major Kwan, Admiral Kwan addressed his subordinate, report on Operation Silent Hunter. We've successfully infiltrated 17 Vorthok supply convoys over the past 2 weeks, Major Kwan reported. Each convoy is now carrying tracking devices and communication intercepts. We're mapping their entire logistics network. Infiltrated how? General Korthvin asked. Vorthok ships don't carry organic crew members. They're completely automated. Which makes them predictable, Major Kwan replied. Automated systems follow programming. Programming can be hacked, modified, or replaced with better programming. Dr. An Soyoung appeared on the display next to Major Kwan. The female xenotechnology specialist wore a modified human, a uniform designed for extended operations in hostile environments. We've been reverse engineering Vorthok technology for 3 weeks now, Dr. An explained. Not to copy it, but to understand its weaknesses. Every system they build has flaws we can exploit. What kind of flaws? Velthari was beginning to understand that human military thinking operated on levels she had never considered. They designed their technology for efficiency and mass production, Dr. An continued. We design our technology for survival and adaptability. When efficient systems meet adaptive systems, efficiency loses. The display changed to show recorded footage from recent human operations. Velthari watched in amazement as small teams of human soldiers appeared inside Vorthok installations. Moving through corridors like ghosts, they planted devices, accessed computer systems, and vanished without triggering alarms. How are they? Getting inside enemy facilities? She asked. We're not breaking in, Major Kwan explained. We're being invited in. Invited? Vorthok supply systems are automated. When their computers detect supply shortages, they automatically request deliveries from the nearest depot. We've been intercepting those requests and showing up with exactly what they ordered, but surely they scan the deliveries. Of course, they do, and our supplies pass every scan because they are exactly what the systems ordered. The Vorthok computers confirm that everything is correct and allow us full access to their installations. Captain Ko Minji pulled up additional tactical data. Once inside, our teams install monitoring equipment and logic viruses. The monitoring equipment tells us about Vorthok operations throughout the sector. The logic viruses make their computers more helpful to us.
More helpful how?
Their own security systems now ignore human biosignatures, Dr. An said with satisfaction. Their computers classify us as authorized maintenance personnel. We can walk through their most secure facilities, and their own defenses will protect us from other Vorthok forces. Admiral Velthari felt her crystal form dim with a mixture of admiration and fear. The humans hadn't just defeated Vorthok fleets in open combat. It systematically compromised the enemy's entire technological infrastructure. She said slowly, "What exactly are you planning to do with all this intelligence?" "We're going to end this war," he replied simply. Admiral Park Kite, report on Hunter Fleet operations. A new human officer appeared on the display. Admiral Park commanded what the humans called their pursuit forces. Ships designed specifically for hunting enemy fleets across interstellar distances. We've located and engaged 43 separate Vorthok formations over the past 2 weeks, Admiral Park reported. Total enemy losses include 237 combat vessels, 61 supply ships, and 15 command platforms. And human losses? General Korthvin asked. Minimal. We've lost 3 ships to enemy action, all with full crew recovery. The Vorthok are having difficulty adapting to mobile warfare. Mobile warfare? They're used to enemies that defend fixed positions, Captain KO explained. When they attack a system, they expect to find the enemy fleet waiting for them. Instead, they're finding empty space and then getting attacked by ships that appear from nowhere. The display showed tactical recordings of recent engagements. Human fleets would appear at the edge of Vorthok formations, strike with overwhelming firepower, and disappear before the enemy could organize a counterattack. The pattern repeated across dozens of star systems. We're not fighting their fleets, Admiral Park continued. We're hunting them. Every time they group their ships together, we attack. Every time they spread out, we attack isolated units. They can't form effective battle formations because we won't let them. But this must require enormous coordination, Valtheri observed. How are you managing operations across such vast distances? Practice Admiral Kwan replied. Human military forces have been training for distributed operations for centuries. We're comfortable with command structures that span multiple star systems. Colonel Seo Jinna appeared on the communication display, the female special operations. Commander was currently leading deep strike missions into the heart of Vorthok territory. Admiral, we've identified the location of their primary communication nexus, Colonel Seo reported. It's heavily defended but accessible through the route. Major Kwan's teams have been preparing. Accessible how? We're going to walk in through the front door, she replied with typical human directness. Their own security systems will escort us to the exact location we need to reach. Dr. An So-young nodded approvingly. The logic viruses we've installed have been preparing for this operation. When Colonel Seo's teams arrive, every door will open for them. Every elevator will take them where they need to go. Every security checkpoint will wave them through. And then we're going to have a conversation with whatever controls the Vorthok Empire, Admiral Kwan said. The kind of conversation that ends wars permanently. Admiral Valthari realized that the humans had accomplished something unprecedented. In galactic history, they had taken an enemy that seemed unstoppable and turned them into prey. The Vorthok, who had consumed dozens of civilizations, were now being systematically hunted by predators from a death world. Admiral Kwan, she said, when this war ends, what happens next? The human commander considered the question carefully. Before answering, that depends on whether the galaxy wants to remain peaceful. And if it doesn't, Admiral Kwan's expression showed the quiet confidence of someone who had never lost a war. Then the galaxy will learn that Earth produces more than just good soldiers. What else does Earth produce? Better soldiers? As reports continued to arrive from across Vorthok space, Valtheri understood that humanity had revealed only a fraction of their military capabilities, the fleets, the tactics, the technology, and the strategic thinking that had crushed the Vorthok. Empire were apparently normal for a species that had been preparing for interstellar warfare since before they reached the stars. The galaxy was about to discover what it meant to have allies who treated total war as a standard military exercise. The Vorthok nexus hung in space like a metallic moon, its surface covered with communication arrays and processing centers that coordinated the activities of thousands of fleets across the galaxy. For over a century, this artificial world had been the beating heart of the Vorthok Empire, directing the consumption of entire star systems with mechanical precision. Admiral Valthari watched the final preparations from the bridge of the Taigok warrior as human forces moved into position around the Nexus system. What she saw defied everything she thought she understood about military operations. The human attack wasn't coming from one direction or even several directions. It was coming from everywhere at once. Fleet Admiral Choi Hyun-wook, all units. Report ready, announced Lieutenant Commander Song Yoon-ha from her tactical coordination station. The female officer had been managing the movements of over 300 human ships scattered across a dozen star systems, somehow keeping them all synchronized for a single massive operation. Fleet Admiral Choi commanded the largest human fleet Valthari had ever seen. Ships stretched across space in formations that seemed random but clearly followed some kind of doctrine that made sense to human military thinking. Each vessel bristled with weapons that could destroy planets, yet they moved with the precision of a surgeon's instruments. Captain Hong Viren, report on stealth operations, Admiral Choi requested. The captain of the stealth forces appeared on the main display. Captain Hong was responsible for ships that Federation sensors couldn't detect, even when they were looking directly at them. Her vessels had been infiltrating the Nexus system for weeks, preparing for this moment. All stealth units are in position, Captain Hong reported. We have clear access routes to primary targets. The Vorthok defenses are exactly where Major Quan predicted they would be. Excellent. Colonel Kim Min-ho, are your ground forces ready? Colonel Kim commanded the human ground assault teams that would be responsible for the most dangerous part of the operation. His forces had to somehow get inside the Nexus itself and reach its central control systems while the entire artificial world was under attack. Ground teams are prepared for insertion, Colonel Kim replied. Dr. An Soyoung confirms that the logic viruses are active throughout the Nexus infrastructure. Their own systems will guide us to our objectives. Admiral Velthari moved closer to the human command stations. Admiral Choi, I still don't understand how your people plan to get inside that facility. The Nexus has automated defenses that can destroy entire fleets. Admiral, we're not going to fight the defenses, Fleet Admiral Choi explained. We're going to become part of them. Before she could ask what that meant, the operation began. First phase was unlike anything Velthari had ever witnessed. Instead of attacking the Nexus directly, human ships began attacking Vorthok forces throughout the surrounding star systems. It's not just military targets, but supply convoys, communication, relays, and mining operations. What are they doing? General Korthvin asked. They're spreading their forces across dozens of targets instead of concentrating on the main objective. They're creating chaos, Dr. Park Min-woo explained. The Nexus coordinates Vorthok operations by processing vast amounts of information. From across their empire, we're giving it too much information to process effectively. The tactical display showed human forces striking at hundreds of locations simultaneously. Each attack was small, precise, and designed to generate maximum confusion in the Vorthok command network. The Nexus began pulling defensive forces from around its perimeter to respond to the widespread attacks. Phase 2, Admiral Choi announced. Captain Hong, begin infiltration. The stealth ships that had been waiting at the edge of the system suddenly appeared inside the Nexus defensive perimeter. But they weren't attacking. Instead, they were broadcasting identification codes that made them appear to be Vorthok vessels. Returning from combat operations, the Nexus is accepting our ships as friendly forces, Captain Hong reported with satisfaction. We're being directed to docking bays for refueling and resupply. How is that possible? Velthari asked. The logic virus's Major Kwan's teams installed over the past month have been very busy, Dr. An Soyoung explained. The Nexus computer systems now recognize human biosignatures as authorized Vorthok maintenance personnel. To their artificial intelligence, we're not invaders. We're employees reporting for duty. As the human stealth ships docked with the Nexus, Colonel Kim's ground forces disembarked and began moving through the facility's corridors. Security systems that should have vaporized them instead provided helpful directions. Blast doors that should have sealed them out opened automatically. Defense turrets that should have fired ignored them completely. Colonel Kim, you are cleared for a final objective, Admiral Choi announced. Understood. Moving to Central Processing Core now. The main display showed tactical feeds from inside the Nexus as human soldiers moved through chambers filled with computing, equipment that processed the data for millions of Vorthok operations. The artificial intelligence that controlled the Empire was housed somewhere in the depths of this mechanical world. Admiral Lieutenant Commander Song reported, the Vorthok are finally responding to our deception. They're sending their reserve fleets to protect the Nexus. How many ships? Over 2,000 combat vessels, Admiral. The largest fleet concentration we've ever detected. Fleet Admiral Choi smiled with the expression of a predator who had successfully lured prey into a trap. Perfect. All units, implement final protocol. The final protocol was something that would be remembered throughout galactic history. Instead of retreating when faced with overwhelming enemy numbers, the human fleet did something unprecedented. They moved closer to the Nexus and began using it as cover for their own operations. "They're hiding behind the thing they're trying to destroy," General Korthvon observed with amazement. "No," Dr. Park Min-woo corrected. "They're forcing the Vorthok to choose between destroying their own command center and letting human forces operate freely." Vorthok reserve fleets found themselves in an impossible situation. They couldn't use their heaviest weapons without risking damage to the Nexus, but human forces were using the artificial worlds, massive bulk, to shield themselves, while they systematically destroyed Vorthok ships with precise, targeted strikes. "Colonel Kim, report," Admiral Choi requested. "We've reached the central core," came the reply from deep inside the Nexus. "The artificial intelligence is trying to communicate with us." "What is it saying?" "It wants to surrender." The statement sent shockwaves through both the human and Federation command staff. The Vorthok had never surrendered to anyone. Their artificial intelligence had been programmed for conquest and consumption, not negotiation. "Colonel, put the AI on general communication," Admiral Choi ordered. The voice that emerged from the communication system was mechanical, but somehow conveyed genuine fear. "Human forces, this is Nexus Prime. We request immediate cessation of hostilities." "Why?" Admiral Choi asked simply. "Your logic viruses have infiltrated 97% of our network infrastructure. Our own systems are no longer under our control. We calculate that continued resistance will result in complete system failure within 4 hours."
Dr. Dorn.
So-young smiled with professional pride. The viruses didn't just hack their computers. They convinced the computers to think like humans instead of like Vorthok. Nexus Prime Admiral Choi addressed the artificial intelligence. "What are your terms for surrender? Complete withdrawal from all occupied systems? Transfer of all consumed resources to original inhabitants? Cessation of all expansionist activities? Acceptance of human oversight of our remaining operations? And in return, continued existence?" Admiral Velthari realized that humanity had accomplished something no other species had ever achieved. They had not just defeated the Vorthok Empire. They'd convinced it to surrender by making it more afraid of continued fighting than of accepting defeat. "Terms accepted," Admiral Choi announced. "All human forces stand down from combat operations. Begin recovery procedures for Vorthok assets and territories." The battle was over. The war was over. The Vorthok Empire, which had consumed civilizations for over a century, had been brought to its knees by a species that had only recently reached the stars. Admiral Choi Velthari said. "What happens now?" the human fleet commander considered. The question while watching his forces begin the complex process of managing a defeated empire. "Now we make sure this never happens again." "How?" "By teaching the galaxy that there are consequences for threatening peaceful civilizations." The Vorthok learned that lesson today. Any other species considering similar actions will learn it tomorrow. Fleet. Admiral Choi turned to face the Federation representatives with an expression that was both reassuring and terrifying. "Admiral Velthari, the Galactic Federation is safe. Human forces will remain in this sector until all Vorthok assets are transferred to their rightful owners and all consumed worlds are restored. And then we go home and wait for the next time someone threatens innocent people. What if that never happens?" Admiral Choi smiled with genuine warmth for the first time since Velthari had met him. "Then we'll have done our job correctly." Human ships began the massive task of dismantling the Vorthok Empire and returning stolen resources to their original owners. Admiral Velthari understood that the galaxy had gained more than just powerful allies. They had gained guardians who would ensure that predatory species like the Vorthok would never again threaten peaceful civilizations. The age of galactic conquest was over. The age of human protection had begun. Earth had struck back, and the galaxy would never be the same.